Welcome to another quick class from Seating Dynamics. My name is Michelle Lang, and today we're going to be discussing durability in dynamic seating. Let's take a look. So when we recommend dynamic seating for a client, it is often because that client has already created damage or there's been actual equipment breakage to the seating system, the mounting hardware, or the wheelchair frame itself. The dynamic component is supposed to absorb those forces to prevent breakage. Because of this, the dynamic component has to be strong enough to prevent this breakage while being able to move. That's quite a tall order. Durability of the component itself is critical. So what provides durability in a dynamic component? Well, three main factors. First is travel. How far does the component move? Second is resistance to that travel. And then finally, other design considerations. What about travel? Well, we're not talking about vacations here. Again, we're talking about the degree of movement of the dynamic component itself. Now, if the dynamic component reaches full travel, where perhaps in this example here you see we have a picture of the dynamic rocker back interface and we have these two blue arrows. If those two surfaces actually touch each other, the elastomer is not strong enough. It doesn't have adequate resistance for this client, and by those metal surfaces touching each other, the force that the client is exerting, rather than being absorbed any further by the component, is now translated to the frame, and that can actually lead to damage to the frame. If the dynamic component doesn't move at all, perhaps the resistance is too high, we may have a similar result. But if that dynamic component is allowed to hang out kind of mid-travel, then the dynamic component can do its job. It can absorb forces, and that will either be an elastomer, a spring, or a hydraulic. Now that can be a bit confusing without all of us huddling around a wheelchair. So let's take a look at these diagrams. On the left, we have a static, non-moving wheelchair. In the center, we have breakage of a back cane as the client extends against this with force. But on the right, we can see that the dynamic component is designed to move in response to that force, preventing this breakage. So it's important the dynamic component can work correctly, not be at end range, but mid-travel so the elastomer or the spring or the hydraulic can do their job. So if the resistance is too low, the client who now has this dynamic component may completely compress, in this case an elastomer. These surfaces touch and we can still have breakage. So choosing the right amount of resistance is critical. The dynamic seating component must be made of durable material or it's going to break. One of the things that also helps increase durability is a number of parts. The more moving parts we have within the dynamic component, the more likely wear and tear or breakage will occur. So for example, the dynamic back hardware on the left here has numerous holes and numerous bolts or screws that go through those. Each of those can become a point of wear, where we get some wear. There's a change in the material around that bolt or screw within the hole. So a round hole can quickly become an oval, and we have some movement that occurs within the dynamic component that's not occurring at the elastomer. This can lead to failure of the dynamic component, whereas on the right we have much fewer moving parts, less holes and bolts, all in an effort to improve durability of the dynamic component itself. So what's the bottom line? Well, when recommending dynamic seating, it's important to also look at the durability of the component itself. And when choosing resistance, we want to make sure that the client cannot move the component through its entire travel. that dynamic components such as an elastomer should be still absorbing forces and keeping those forces off of metal surfaces of the dynamic component itself that could translate forces to the chair. Proper recommendation and configuration can make or literally break the outcome for our clients. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to either myself or Seating Dynamics directly. We'd be happy to help you out. Thank you very much for attending this quick class. We hope you can join us for another one in the near future.